About 4 years ago, I went on a road trip, and it was actually to get my dog, who has since passed, away from the fireworks that go on here around the 4th of July, because they used to cause him so much trauma and distress. We would just get in the car, take a road trip, typically not planned, and we would go somewhere where the fireworks were illegal. So for this particular journey, we packed up, we didn't know where we were going, and we headed out. And we ended up on our journey of hiking and exploring at a cute little quaint motel somewhere along our path. And when we checked in, Milo was already seeming anxious. We'd spent a long day in the car. Whenever I would get in and out and leave him, he was anxious. And of course, getting into this place that he wasn't used to made him anxious. He was an anxious little dog. So we got there, and I felt really good about it because I knew that once we got inside, he sniffed everything and got comfortable, that he would settle down, and I would get to as well. The room actually had a really nice jacuzzi tub as well. So we were both looking forward to soaking, having a nice bubble bath, and getting into bed and just enjoying our space. So I recall checking in and having this immediate encounter with Bernadette when we arrived. And Bernadette said to me, "We're going to try something this weekend while you're here. You're going to listen to us when we tell you to look away from one of your beliefs." And immediately I knew that that was the work that was ahead of us. I had no idea what was coming, and I have learned not to ask questions because they serve no purpose. So into our room we went. The room, like I said, was upgraded for us. We ended up finding it online for this ridiculous amount of money in this peak tourist location called Leavenworth, Washington. And because it was a last-minute booking, we got the most incredible suite with all these perks and add-ons. Into the room we went, filling the tub, making everything feel like a gorgeous little space for us. Milo started to settle down, and I did too. I got in the tub, had a beautiful soak, lit some candles, turned the AC up so I could put the fireplace on, and made myself so cozy. So I got into bed all washed and cleaned, with my sweet little Milo also washed and cleaned. And I decided to just lay there and just share my gratitude for the space and the moment. So I was laying in the bed with one foot out from underneath the covers, as I love to do, feeling a little bit chilly and a little bit warm all at the same time. My body started to settle, and I felt so safe and so comfortable. And then it started. I heard all of these sounds. It sounded literally like someone was banging up against the wall behind me. And we were on the top floor, and we were in a corner room. So I knew exactly where the sounds were coming from. I could tell just by the location of my room. And immediately, I again heard Bernadette say, "Whatever arises here, we want you to look away from it. Just don't engage those senses." Well, I don't know about you guys, but when you hear banging, you hear sounds that sound as though someone's being attacked or hurt. When you hear sounds that echo that, and everything within you tightens up. Milo starts to puff little barks, and he heard it too, and both of us were feeling anxious about it. But again, Bernadette said, rest here. Look away from these senses. This isn't your concern. So I went into my breath work because I recognize my only role here is to breathe and not resist. So when these little things arise, back to the breath I go. The in-breath, the out-breath, the sitting with the breath, and the release, all in a square pattern, was where I began to pay my focus. And as I began to do this, Milo began to calm down. Now the sounds were still going on in the room next to us. They were even getting more contentious and scary, meaning that it sounded as though it was a domestic violence situation. And the thoughts began to percolate. Someone's getting attacked. Someone's getting beat up. I need to call the front desk. I should dial 911. And I was hearing sounds as though someone were reacting as if they were getting hit or attacked. But I wasn't hearing anyone's voice clearly, and I wasn't hearing anyone crying for help. So again, Bernadette reminded me, turn away from your senses. Trust this process. So back to the breath I went. Again, everything settled down. The sounds are still going on in the room, but within our room, everything was settling into a peaceful place again. Milo settled down. He was definitely feeding off of my energy versus the energy apparently coming from the room beside us. So as I stayed focused on that breath, at some stage I drifted off to sleep. And I woke up several hours later feeling the most rested I had felt in a very long time. I remember Milo was in such a deep sleep that even though I got up and stirred, made a cup of tea, went to the restroom, and did all of these things, he would normally follow me around in a hotel like this, but he didn't. He was passed out on the bed, literally with a big smile on his face and his little puppy paws jerking about, very obviously in a very deep sleep, having a beautiful dream. So I climbed back into bed next to him, and I engaged with Bernadette a little bit more on what had happened. The sounds from the room next door had dissipated. I wasn't hearing anything except for the buzz and the hum of the air conditioning unit and the fireplace. At this stage, it was dark outside. We had already had our dinner for the night, so I decided to just take another bath and really enjoy that tub. I filled it to the brim, made it nice and bubbly, and hopped in. And this is where the conversation with Bernadette deepened. She said to me, how do you know that what you were hearing in that apparent fearful exchange was anything more than your mind making up a story about it? And how often do you think that this situation takes place in your 3D dream world? So I sat with that as I was soaking, because I know, as with most questions that come from my guidance team, they're not looking for me to answer it at all. They're looking for me to sit in the stillness of it, because I now know that the answer itself will resolve itself. So I enjoyed that tub soak, and Milo slept through the whole thing. At some stage, I got back into bed with him, and we both slept through the entire evening. We packed up the next morning to carry on with our travels, and as we were at the front desk checking out, a huge family came behind us. There were about 6 of them, and 2 of the young lads were wearing sports jerseys. And as I was waiting for the clerk to come over, because she was also manning the little cafeteria area, I began a conversation with the sweet young men behind me and asked what sport they played. And we just chatted back and forth. And as I was chatting with them, one of them was holding the key card, and I noticed it was for the room next to mine. Immediately I knew, of course, this is a sports family. Of course, they have children that are probably bouncing from bed to bed, from spot to spot, probably wrestling, probably having all kinds of fun. Who knows if the parents were even in the room, because they were about early teenage era. And I just got this big validation and calmness in my whole body. And then I heard Bernadette say, "You see, the old version of you may have picked the phone up in fear. That version of you may have called the front desk or even 911, assuming a domestic violence situation. None of that was happening in truth, and nothing within you knew anything more than what the mind was telling you about it." This was the first time I had to really, really look at that more intimately within myself. It was the first time Bernadette really called me out on looking away from the fearful thoughts that were being validated by the fearful sounds, that were being engaged by the fearful thoughts in that now moment. Mind was blown, but it went even further. Once we checked out and we got into the car and we carried on with our journey, as I often did on these road trips, I had no music, no audiobook. I just let the God Squad speak to me as we traveled. Milo always fell asleep in the car, so he was fast asleep enjoying his little journey. And this is what Bernadette came in with. Our karma, when we are in the physical body, is only based on our thoughts about what is happening and our reaction to those thoughts. Karma is not what we have been conditioned to believe in the 3D. It never, ever, not even once, has anything to do with anyone other than ourselves. We can certainly paint a picture that it comes from our ancestors, or it comes from some other place outside of ourselves. But this very experience validated for Kelly that the only karma that was attempting to brew there was one of the own mind that she referred to as me. This has since become such a relevant experience for Kelly in the 3D. I turn away from my senses all the time now. I don't even believe them anymore. This is why I speak to the fact that until we get really comfortable understanding what we are in the journey, and that our dialogue is the only thing we seem to have any ability to react to, is where I now place all of my focus. And that all of these seeming fearful, extraneous, external situations that want my attention and validation are absolutely none of my business. Now, whenever these expressions and experiences attempt to happen in the story of Kelly again, Bernadette will simply pop in and say, "Hey, Kelly, remember Leavenworth?" And instantly, I'm back in that unraveling. It's none of my business. It's God's business. It's not even my fear. And it certainly is not God's fear. So what is really going on here? Where is this thought arising from? And to whom does it belong? Show me the origin. And immediately the thought lets go of me. As I always say in these videos, you guys, I'm not a master. I'm not a guru. I'm not a teacher. I'm someone that had a profound experience, and I have earnestly, since that experience, continued to do my self-work. It is not always easy, as you can hear. For Kelly to look away from what she would have perceived as a possible domestic violence situation based on her old belief systems, her old fears, and her old mind-minding behaviors could have created that very outcome. I have no doubt at all that if I had called 911 or the front desk, that whole next door experience could have been my exact fear played out. And I have no doubt at all that my story about it would have created that very outcome. So if something within you can hear this today and recognize that you too often have these scary experiences that are either seen through in truth or the opposite, come to fruition based on your story about them, this might be a good time to look at that. And if you feel like you can't look at it alone and you want a soul guide who can talk and help you through it, reach out to Kelly. The contact details are in the description of this video, and I am happy to be your guide to help you see through the same illusions that I once believed in. As you can hear, this is still unraveling here in the story of Kelly. This work is never done. What is happening here in the story of Kelly is way more leaning in to that internal guidance and that self-work, and less leaning out to those fearful beliefs, fearful thoughts, and fearful ideologies that used to capture so much of my attention. I hope this was helpful today. Much love. Until next time.